Hey guys, tonight we time travel to one of the oldest cities in the world. Uruk, land of gods, reeds, dust storms, and an accounting system so meticulous it would make your CPA cry into his coffee. Picture this. The year is somewhere around 2500 BCE. The air smells like sun-baked clay, goat fat, and something vaguely sour you can't quite place. You're not wearing shoes because no one does. And you've just been recruited, or, let's be honest, conscripted, into the temple economy of a bustling Mesopotamian city. Your job? Recording the divine flow of barley, cattle, labourers, and temple beer, by hand, on wet clay, with a reed stick. Welcome to the world's first bureaucracy, and buddy, you are very much on the bottom rung. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments, what time is it where you are, and what corner of the world are you listening from? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The sun is barely up, and already you're sweating. You shuffle barefoot along a narrow street paved in ancient dust, a tablet pouch slung over one shoulder, and a dull ache in your back from sleeping on woven reed mats. The city around you murmurs awake, merchants hauling baskets of dates, children chasing each other with tiny clay toys, and somewhere nearby, a goat yelling like it's auditioning for an opera. You're headed to the temple complex, which squats in the centre of the city like a divine bureaucracy with mud brick wings. This isn't just a place of worship, it's the beating administrative heart of Uruk. It owns land, it owns animals, it owns you. The temple priests, known as Sangha, believe they speak on behalf of the gods, and the gods apparently are very interested in accurate inventory records. Every head of cattle, every jar of beer, every field of barley, it's all tallied and stored in ledgers made from clay, then baked into eternity in temple kilns. Lose one of those ledgers? You don't just get written up, you get cursed. As you pass through the outer gates, the stone eyes of a guardian statue seem to track your movements. It's likely just the angle, or not. Mesopotamians took their statues seriously. Historians still argue whether people believed the gods literally inhabited these statues or just communicated through them on weekends. You reach the scribe's courtyard. It's not glamorous, just a sun-scorched rectangle with benches, a few jars of leftover ink for painting seals, and rows of low tables covered in clay dust. The other scribes are already there, dozens of young men and eunuchs, some yawning, some grumbling, and a few smug veterans with wrists like stone and eyes that have seen too many columns of barley ratios. They barely look up as you arrive. You're the new guy, the outsider, and rumour has it you still flinch when the stylus hits the clay. Amateurs. Your supervisor appears, a bony man with more wrinkles than the tablet you're holding. His name is Nabutu, which roughly translates to he who never forgets. You kind of wish he would. First delivery of the day, he grunts. Oxen from the fields of Dumuzi. Count and record, don't mess up. A line of bleating, snorting livestock is being herded past the courtyard. Two scribes are already tallying, their styluses dancing across wet clay as quickly as the animals move. You scramble to catch up, eyes darting between hooves and horns, trying to figure out whether that last beast was number 23 or 24. You hope someone else caught it. They probably didn't. Now the fun part, transcribing the numbers in cuneiform. This isn't simple addition. You're dealing with a number system that's partly base 60, partly base 10, and 100% designed to make you cry. A single mistake, and some poor farmer gets underpaid, or worse, the gods get shortchanged. The reed stylus feels clumsy in your hand. You jab it into the clay with more force than necessary, and the triangle-shaped symbols come out wobbly. Not a great start. And then, because fate is a comedian, a sudden gust of wind sends a fine layer of grit across your tablet. You squint, blow gently, and realise too late you've smudged half the numbers. Classic rookie move. Redo it, Nabutu says flatly, not even looking up, and next time cover the tablet. You mutter something unrepeatable under your breath, then remember, this courtyard has ears. And those ears belong to priests who believe divine punishment includes migraines, boils, and getting reassigned to night duty in the archives. You smile weakly and start over. As the day crawls forward, your respect for the ancients grows, if only out of self-preservation. These aren't just numbers you're punching into a divine spreadsheet. They're lives, crops, taxes, war spoils. There's a reason these records are kept in vaulted rooms guarded by men with very sharp spears. You overhear one of the older scribes muttering about Tablet 37C and how it once went missing for 3 days. When it was finally found, the head accountant shaved his eyebrows in mourning, and the culprit was last seen walking east toward the desert, alone, without sandals. "Don't lose tablets," the senior scribe mutters again, just loud enough for you to hear. You nod, loud and clear, and yet there's a part of you that's intrigued. The clay is unforgiving, but something about scratching order into chaos feels powerful, like you're bending the world into neat lines and columns. It's control, in a world where floods and famines and gods can ruin everything with a shrug. Then again, maybe you're just getting clay lag from being out in the sun too long. You blink away the dust, wipe your palms on your tunic and go back to counting oxen. 29, no 30, definitely 30, probably. And just when you think things can't get worse, Nabutu appears again. This time with a sealed tablet and a raised eyebrow. "Temple wants to promote you," he says, "to official eunuch accountant." You smile, until you realise what that promotion actually involves. Your smile freezes. Promotion. That word should taste sweet, but right now it lands on your tongue like ash. Because in ancient Mesopotamia, becoming an official eunuch accountant isn't just a job title, it's a lifestyle, and a surgical one. You're ushered, perhaps a bit too eagerly, into the inner courtyard of the temple complex. A hush falls as you pass. The older scribes look away, some with a flicker of pity. Others just smirk. The unspoken rule is clear. Advancement requires sacrifice. In this case, the permanent kind. The priest overseeing this, let's call it a transition, is draped in ceremonial linen. He hums a low hymn to Enlil, god of air and fate, as two assistants guide you toward a low stone bench. No, there is no anesthesia. Yes, there is a reed mat to bite down on. Historians still argue whether Mesopotamian eunuchs were always castrated fully or partially, and whether it was done for loyalty, aesthetics, or simply to keep the temple staff drama-free. Either way, it's not great news for you. Now, you may be wondering, why would someone agree to this? And the answer is surprisingly practical. Eunuchs were trusted. They couldn't father children, which meant no secret dynasties, no heirs angling for temple power. Their loyalty was assumed. Their position, especially in temple or palace bureaucracy, could be one of influence, even respect. But none of that comforts you as the assistants bring out a disturbingly shiny bronze blade and a bowl of chilled barley beer to relax you. The priest leans close, breath smelling faintly of frankincense and fermented garlic. He smiles. "You'll feel transformed." "Thanks. Really helpful. Let's fade to black here for everyone's sake." You wake up groggy, bundled in linen and lying on a pallet in the scribe's infirmary. Your legs are stiff, your everything hurts, but you're alive, mostly. And beside you, placed with near-ceremonial care, is a freshly fired clay tablet. On it is your new designation. Temple Record Keeper, Grade the 3, Eunuch Scribe Initiated. You've officially made it. Your duties now go beyond mere livestock counts. You're entrusted with grain tallies, tax logs, even a few diplomatic correspondences. Some of these messages are encrypted using rare cuneiform symbols known only to the inner circle. It's kind of thrilling, in a you could be executed for misplacing this sort of way. One of your first assignments in this new role involves a particularly sensitive inventory, sacrificial offerings to Inanna. These aren't your average grocery lists. They include strange quantities, like precisely 33 figs and a half loaf of barley bread shaped like a sheep. Why half? Nobody knows. Maybe Inanna's watching her carbs. The figures must be exact. One miscount, and it's not just a performance review, it's an omen. In fact, one of your colleagues recounts a tale of a priest who misrecorded a wine shipment by 1 jar, and the city flooded 3 days later. Historians still debate whether it was a coincidence or just the result of a poorly maintained levee. But the priests, they remember the wine and the water. With your new title also comes access to a private stylus. A slim, finely carved reed with your name incised in tiny proud strokes. It's both a badge of honour and an anchor of responsibility. The stylus is sacred. You don't lend it, you don't lose it, you definitely don't chew on it while thinking. The last guy who did that accidentally signed a shipment of oxen with his own name, and spent the next year recounting grain by hand in a storage room lit by oil lamps in despair. Despite your discomfort, you begin to settle into this elevated role. You even get a spot in the semi-covered area of the courtyard, shade, a stool, and a place to hang your wax seal. Luxury, but with status comes scrutiny. One morning you notice a junior scribe trailing behind you just a little too long. She's young, sharp-eyed, and clearly interested in more than your tablet technique. Her name is Lilu, and she has ambitions, big ones. You suspect she's memorizing your routes, your habits, maybe even your cuneiform flourishes. Office politics, you realize, existed long before cubicles. To test her, you accidentally misplace a practice tablet with outdated barley conversion ratios. She finds it, of course, too quickly, returns it with a smile just a little too triumphant. She's good. You'll need to watch her. That night, you limp home, still sore from your promotion, and collapse onto your mat. Outside, a low drumbeat echoes from the ziggurat where the priests perform a nightly rite. Somewhere, someone is chanting to the goddess of justice. You wonder if she has a sense of humour. As sleep threatens to pull you under, you imagine a world where accountants don't need temple approval, or blades, or divine authorization to balance the books. Maybe, in a few thousand years, someone will invent soft chairs and digital spreadsheets. But then again, where's the adventure in that? Morning arrives in Mesopotamia like a slap from the sun. The air is already thick with heat and the scent of stale river mud by the time you shuffle into the scribe's courtyard. Your first full day as an official eunuch accountant, and already you're rethinking your life choices. But at least the stylus feels more familiar in your hand now, and that's good, because today's lesson is the fine art of writing in clay without losing your sanity. You sit at your assigned station, a low bench facing a slightly raised clay platform. Before you lies a stack of soft rectangular clay tablets, cool and damp, waiting for the weight of your reed stylus. The scribe instructor today is a wiry man named Callum, whose beard contains more salt than pepper, and whose patience is rumoured to be thinner than a temple veil. He doesn't speak much. He doesn't have to. With a curt nod, he drops a wooden plank in front of you, showing perfect cuneiform arrangements. Columns of neat wedge-shaped impressions sorted into categories: livestock, grain, seasonal workers. Each row, a story of someone's debt, duty, or donation to the gods. And now it's your turn. You dip your stylus into the soft clay and press. Not too hard, you learned that the hard way yesterday when your strokes came out looking like the aftermath of a goat stampede. But not too soft either, or your marks vanish like promises made during a beer ceremony. The reed makes a satisfying chuck sound with each impression. You fall into a rhythm: vertical wedge, diagonal wedge, horizontal wedge, over and over, forming the basis of a script that would eventually evolve into written language as we know it. Your brain hums with focus, hands stiffening, back protesting, and still, chuck, chuck, chuck. At one point you glance over and catch a glimpse of Callum watching. He nods once, barely perceptible. High praise in Mesopotamian. Cuneiform, for all its seeming rigidity, is weirdly beautiful. Each symbol is a code made from angles. Want to say barley? That's 5 strokes. 2 oxen? 7. But if you angle just one wedge too far, it changes the meaning, possibly from sacrificial goat to insult to the gods, which you definitely want to avoid. Ask the guy who once accidentally called Enki the wet sponge god. He now manages latrines near the canal. As you scribble through a batch of entries, barley shipments to the southern fields, a tally of temple goat births, you're hit by a small epiphany. This system works. Despite the heat, the lack of vowels, and the constant danger of stepping on a scorpion, this is a marvel of civilization. You're helping maintain an economy, a religious tradition, and a form of memory that outlives flesh. Every wedge you press might be read 1,000 years from now. One of the older scribes, Baletu, interrupts your epiphany with a snort. "Don't fall in love with the tablets," he mutters. "They don't love you back." He drops a misshapen tablet on your desk. "Fix this. Some junior used the wrong symbol for worker. It says we pay 25 pigs instead of men." You blink. "And no one noticed?" Balatu shrugs. "Happened 3 months ago. The pigs are gone, the men want pay, and the overseer wants someone to blame. So you smooth the clay. You correct the script. You reseal the tablet with the proper date, and somewhere a minor crisis is averted. This, you realize, is half the job. Not just recording information, but managing memory. Shaping history with a stylus and the occasional creative retcon. Quirky side note. Some tablets even include personal notes, doodles, or complaints. One famous example mentions a scribe's dislike of his colleague's unpleasant face and goat-like odour. Another includes a perfectly scratched drawing of what appears to be a goose in a hat. Historians still argue whether these were inside jokes, training exercises, or just ancient boredom scribbles. Midday approaches, and the courtyard is like a brick oven. You take a brief break, stretching your aching arms. Callum approaches and taps the edge of your bench with his stylus. "You're steady. That's good. You'll start recording ration distributions tomorrow," you nod, both honoured and slightly terrified. "Rations?" you ask, wiping your forehead. "Food payments to labourers," he says. "Barley for canal diggers, beer for temple guards, salt for brickmakers. It all has to balance. If it doesn't," he gestures upward toward the temple spire where a carved eye watches from the ziggurat's peak. "They'll know." Ration tablets, you soon learn, are sacred documents. They don't just represent logistics, they're a record of loyalty. Every worker paid means one more prayer answered, one more roof built, one more riverbank fortified against the Tigris's wrath. And when the river floods, and it will flood, you'll want those workers loyal and fed. As your training winds down for the day, your hands are caked with dried clay, and your tunic clings to your skin. The last light of the day turns the courtyard gold, then copper, then a deep, grainy brown. You glance at your growing pile of tablets. They are not beautiful, they are not perfect, but they are yours. You think back to that first moment this morning, pressing the stylus into wet clay. How alien it felt, how crude. Now your hands ache with purpose, and maybe just a little arthritis. The sun hasn't even crested the mud brick rooftops when you're awakened by a shrill bleating right outside your reed and plaster lodging. It's not a trumpet or temple bell that rouses Mesopotamian scribes, it's livestock. Specifically, goats having a full-blown meltdown as they're herded toward the temple corrals. You sigh, roll off your mat, and splash a handful of canal-cooled water onto your face. Today's breakfast awaits, and spoiler alert, it's not pancakes. You sit cross-legged beside a low clay hearth while a servant, older than the city walls by the look of her, hands you a bowl of something. You poke it with your finger. It's a congealed mush the colour of disappointment. Goat's milk, ground emmer, possibly a hare, definitely room temperature. You swallow it with the enthusiasm of someone on a dare. One of the oddities of Mesopotamian life is that food isn't exactly a culinary adventure. It's functional, nutritious-ish, and depending on your temple rank, barely seasoned. The higher priests? They feast on honeyed dates, roasted lamb, maybe even beer laced with exotic herbs. You, however, get porridge that actively resists being chewed. Occasionally, when the barley rations are generous and the gods are feeling frisky, you'll get a spiced lentil mash. It's still brown, still lukewarm, but now has a bite that hints at long-forgotten zest. "Chef's special," the cook will mutter proudly, stirring it with the same stick she uses to chase off cats. And then there's the goat's milk, always slightly tangy, always suspiciously warm. You've learned not to question its freshness or its source. As you finish your meal, a colleague named Abu passes by, already mid-sip of a clay mug filled with something steaming. "You still drink that?" he asks, nodding at your mush. You glance at his mug. "Is that—" "Goat milk beer," he says. "Breakfast of gods." You opt not to ask how long it's been fermenting. On your way to the temple courtyard, you pass a small stand selling tutu, flatbread wrapped around what could be date paste or crushed legumes or mud. Hard to say. A hungry dog eyes it hopefully. You both walk on in mutual defeat. Food aside, your workday begins with another pile of ration tablets needing final approval. You're in charge of reviewing yesterday's entries, counts of workers, quantities of food, and the long list of exceptions, entries where someone was sick, late, or mysteriously missing, and the temple still wants to dock their pay. Sound familiar? One entry stands out. A man named Uruk received 5 shekels of barley, but only worked half the day. When you ask why, the overseer shrugs. Fainted from heat. Again, weak blood. You sigh and log it as a partial ration, making a mental note to double-check Ilukum's name in future lists. He's either playing the system or needs a day off. Unfortunately, labour rights haven't been invented yet. The prevailing belief is that exhaustion builds character and proximity to divine blessings. Mid-morning, a temple courier drops off a sealed message tablet. It's addressed to Nabutu, your supervisor, but as his proxy today, you've been promoted again, it falls to you to receive and log it. You inspect the seal, a familiar circular pattern with the symbol of the moon god Sin. That means the tablet likely concerns night labour schedules, moon cycle planting rituals, or, if you're unlucky, astronomy-based complaints about the new calendar alignment. Crack. The seal breaks with a dry pop, and the tablet reads like a bureaucratic riddle. Something about 7 fewer guards assigned to the canal watch this month. Due to miscounted barley rations 2 cycles ago, you're now supposed to backtrack and find which entry caused the shortfall. Fun. You groan and wave over Lilu, the ambitious junior scribe you've been side-eyeing since last week. She gives a little bow that's just a hair too dramatic. Yes, honoured accountant. Check barley disbursements for night watchmen during the second moon of last quarter. Cross-reference with Sin's cycle. She's already scribbling before you finish. Show off. Still, she's efficient. Within an hour, she's back with 3 candidate entries, 2 of which have discrepancies. One lists 13 guards instead of the expected 15. The other uses an outdated unit of measure, suggesting someone copied from a pre-flood tablet. This one here, she says, pointing to the latter, uses gur when it should be silla. The conversion's off by... I know, you interrupt, but you don't. You just don't want her to get too comfortable. Lunch, when it finally comes, is more goat milk and flatbread, with a side of mashed date paste that sticks to your teeth like betrayal. You chew slowly, staring at the sky, wondering how a civilization that invented writing never figured out salt. Still, you're adjusting. There's a rhythm to the work, a hypnotic flow of symbols and responsibilities. Even the discomforts, bad food, worse posture, clay dust lungs, become background noise, like office chatter in any era, just with fewer spreadsheets and more donkeys. But as you head back to your station, you pass 2 scribes whispering urgently, huddled over a misfired tablet. One holds it up, smudged, cracked, and worst of all, sealed wrong. The impression's skewed. The symbol of the temple appears flattened and fuzzy. That's going to the archives like this, you ask. The younger scribe, pale, nods. It already went. High priest wants it burned and redone. But it was already fired. You wince. Once a tablet is fired, it's forever. Or close to it. That's why mistakes are so feared. It's not just that they're hard to fix. It's that they become permanent record. An immortal oopsie. You make a mental note. Triple check everything before the seal goes on. And never snack near the tablet kiln. You return to your workbench to find something new and ominous waiting for you. A freshly delivered ceremonial cylinder seal. Engraved, polished, and still smelling faintly of incense and... ash. That's odd. These things don't usually come warm. Beside it lies a small clay tablet with just 2 words impressed into its surface. Temple audit. 2 words. Infinite stress. You pick up the cylinder seal gingerly. It's heavier than expected, carved with intricate scenes of a god, probably Enlil, standing atop a mountain of ledgers, while tiny humans grovel and offer, yes, what looks like a sheep wearing a wig. Scholars still debate whether these stylized seals were meant to be purely symbolic or if some priests genuinely believed they acted as divine signatures. Either way, you're not taking chances. You roll the seal across a test tablet. The impression is clean, nearly perfect, and that's a good thing because temple audits are sacred business. The last scribe who messed one up, rumour has it he now manages the river reeds. Not a department, just actual reeds. Your instructions are clear. Review the barley and animal disbursements for the last 2 lunar cycles, prepare a summary, and, this is critical, apply the cylinder seal to the final tablet before submission. Not your seal. This seal. The holy one. The one that, by holding now, you are technically not worthy to touch. Awesome. As the sun climbs higher, the audit begins, and you quickly realise something. Nothing matches. The barley tallies from month 1 don't match the expected yield from the grain houses. The number of oxen born doesn't line up with the animal pen's records. Somewhere, someone is either lazy, lying, or lactose intolerant, and it's showing in their math. You flag 3 entries for rechecking. One lists 14 oxen, 3 calves, 1 divine miscount. That last item shouldn't exist. Divine miscounts are like holy typos. No one admits them, but they cause massive ripple effects. By mid-morning, your work surface is a battlefield of half-dried tablets, abandoned styluses, and broken twigs used for makeshift rulers. Your hair is stiff with clay dust. Your eyes sting. And then, as if summoned by your rising stress levels, he appears. Nabutu. He's back from his mysterious 3-day migraine fast, and he doesn't look pleased. "You're using the cylinder seal?" he asks, eyes narrowing. "It was assigned to me," you answer carefully. Nabutu says nothing for a moment, then shrugs. "Be sure you understand what that means." He walks off. That's it. No further explanation. Just a cryptic parting line that feels like a curse wrapped in a proverb. You continue the audit, double-checking values with Lilu, who is disturbingly efficient today. She barely blinks as she recites conversion rates and citation tablets from memory. You can't decide whether to trust her or start sleeping with your stylus under your mat. At one point, a priest delivers a list of in-kind donations to be included in the audit. The items are exotic. 2 jars of perfumed sesame oil, 3 crates of dried fish from downriver, always sketchy. There's just 1 woven lion mask for festival use, and a clay statue with 4 arms labelled "Gift from Elamite Dignitary, possibly cursed." You don't even blink anymore. This is your life. And yet, amid the chaos, you find yourself oddly proud. You're assembling not just a report, but a truth, or at least a version of it the temple will accept. Every number, every line is a story. Somewhere, a young boy got his first meal because the rationalist remembered his name. Somewhere else, a temple tax collector pocketed 3 shekels. But you caught it. It feels important and dangerous, because in Mesopotamia, numbers aren't just math, they're power. To control the records is to control the narrative. And narrative, that's as sacred as scripture. You start to notice patterns. A priest's estate that claims to have donated 10 jars of oil, yet no corresponding receipt exists. A herd of cattle whose numbers mysteriously spike the day before an inspection. You flag them, but quietly. You're not looking to start a war. Just let the tablet suggest things. Finally, the summary tablet is ready. It's long, dense, and written with a level of precision that would make even Nabutu wince. You prepare to roll the seal. Your hands tremble. This moment is like signing your soul to the clay. Once the seal touches the surface, it's official, immutable, holy. You exhale slowly and press the seal gently into the damp clay, rolling with even pressure. Shh. The image appears, crisp and divine-looking. Even the sheep in a wig detail came through perfectly. You place the tablet in the drying rack. No mistakes, no smudges. It's done. As you wipe your hands, a young runner arrives with news. The audit tablet will be reviewed directly by the high priest tomorrow at sunrise, in the ziggurat chamber, in front of the god statue. Fantastic. That evening you lie awake on your mat, staring at the woven reeds above. Outside, the city buzzes gently. Merchants closing stalls, families praying to the setting sun, somewhere a child singing a lullaby. But in your mind, all you see is the seal, and the truth it might be hiding. Dawn. Again. You rise before the city does, slipping into your cleanest tunic, which, let's be honest, still smells vaguely of clay and last week's barley mash, and begin the long, dusty walk to the ziggurat. It looms ahead like a mud-brick mountain, its tiers shrouded in early morning haze. You've passed it 100 times, but today you're going inside. Not for prayer, not for ritual, for accounting. At the summit sits the high priest. Beneath him, the god. Beneath that, your audit tablet. It's a very specific hierarchy. You climb the steps, heart pounding, stylus tucked in your sash like a dagger, though it's more suited to scribbling than stabbing. You pass guards wearing copper-studded vests and the vacant expressions of men who've seen too many spreadsheets sanctified as scripture. Inside the chamber, it's dim, cool, quiet in the kind of way that makes your ears ring. You immediately notice the massive statue of the city's patron god. Enlil again, or maybe Anu, depending on the priest's favourite. He's carved from dark stone, with inlaid shell eyes that seem to glow faintly in the torchlight. You stand in the centre, palms pressed together, audit tablet on a plinth before you. The high priest arrives in a rustle of embroidered linen and a whiff of cedar oil. He doesn't look at you, just at the tablet. "Explain the seal," he says, his voice echoing off the chamber walls. You clear your throat. "Authorised for divine review. Cylinder seal was applied after reconciliation of all discrepancies." "Discrepancies?" he asks sharply. "Here we go." You detail the mismatched barley counts, the duplicate entries, the donated lion mask, which, by the way, still hasn't been claimed. The priest listens, unmoving as you speak. Every syllable feels like balancing a cuneiform tablet on a knife edge. When you finish, he gestures to a lesser priest who steps forward and rotates the tablet slowly, inspecting it like it might hiss. There are some, the assistant murmurs, who say your audit casts unfavourable light on temple management. You pause. Choose your words like you're laying dry twigs in a fire pit. The audit reflects only what the numbers say, nothing more, nothing less. There's a moment of silence so thick you could press a seal into it. The high priest raises one hand. I have seen enough. You exhale, very, very slowly. The gods are pleased with precision, he says finally. Errors dishonour us. Truth corrects them. You may go. It's not a compliment, but in Mesopotamia, it might as well be a standing ovation. You bow, retrieve your tablet, and descend the ziggurat with the cautious dignity of someone who's just survived a performance review with an immortal sky being. Back in the courtyard, the air feels lighter. Or maybe you do. Lilu meets you with a look that's half smirk, half curiosity. They didn't throw you into the river, she says. Not yet, you reply, and then it's back to the grind. Your next task, more livestock tallies, and this time you're told to conduct them personally, in the field, which means trekking outside the city walls into the pastures and penyards that supply the temple's herds. You're assigned a dusty reed-bound ledger and a guard with a lazy eye named Kuzu. He doesn't talk much, but he carries a mean bronze-tipped staff. You're not sure if he's there to protect you, or to keep you from accidentally altering counts. The heat out here is a whole different kind of punishment. The fields shimmer. The oxen seem to move in slow motion, and the herdsmen, they couldn't care less about your pristine ledgers. I counted 78, one tells you, as a donkey wanders by behind him. 78 or 79, you ask? He shrugs. They move. You roll your eyes, take the count again yourself and mark it with a tiny star. Your personal symbol for probably false, but no one will admit it. You're sweating through your tunic, biting back curses, when Kuzu suddenly points toward a fenced enclosure. That one's off, he mutters. Sure enough, a black calf, maybe 2 weeks old, is limping. The herdsman winces. Stepped on something sharp, we didn't report it yet. You make a note. Potential loss. Medical review required. You're not a vet, but you know a liability when you see one. Still, this is the kind of oversight your audit work relies on. Without first-hand checks, the whole system's just a glorified rumour mill. On your way back into the city, Kuzu finally speaks. You're different, he says. Don't think you'll last. You blink. Is that a threat or a compliment? He shrugs. Both. You decide not to ask what happened to the last field count scribe. When you return to the courtyard, you wash your feet in a basin so full of mud it might legally qualify as a minor deity. You record your data, flag 3 more entries, and submit your findings. Just another day. But that night, as you fall onto your mat and let the drone of crickets lull you, you can't help but feel the seal press against your mind like a phantom weight. You rolled it. You sealed truth into clay, and now the gods remember. The next morning arrives with the usual soundtrack. Distant goat yells, a baby crying 2 doors down, and the soft murmur of someone sweeping clay dust off a rooftop. You stretch your aching limbs and mutter to yourself, survived another day. That's 2 in a row. At this point, the scribe's courtyard feels almost like home, if home came with an endless backlog of grain receipts, and a growing suspicion that at least one of your co-workers wants to see you reassigned to dung storage. You settle into your spot and begin reviewing the day's tablets. Nothing unusual at first. Barley shipments, updated tool inventories, a revised list of guards for the west gate. Then you hear it. The unmistakable sound of someone slamming a tablet down with too much emphasis. You glance over. Lilu. She looks up slowly, her jaw tight, eyes colder than a winter wind off the Tigris. I wasn't told about the field inspection, she says. You blink. Didn't think it needed a group outing, she doesn't laugh. I'm in charge of animal records. You audited my domain. Ah, there it is. You'd stepped on toes without realizing it. And while Lilu may be younger and newer to temple work, she has allies. Whispers travel faster than ox carts here. You feel the tension ripple through the courtyard like a dropped jar of oil. It only gets worse when Nabutu strolls in, looking both bored and mildly annoyed. His eyes settle on Lilu, then shift to you. Problem? He asks, chewing a reed stalk. No, sir, Lilu says too quickly. Just discussing overlapping responsibilities. Nabutu's gaze lingers. Overlap is a dangerous thing, so are unfinished audits. And just like that, he's gone. Lilu picks up her stylus with theatrical calm and starts inscribing. You pretend not to notice her writing unusually fast. Over the next few days, the atmosphere changes, subtly at first. A stylus goes missing. A ration tablet you were working on is suddenly corrected by another scribe before you submit it. Someone reshelves your seal in the wrong place, twice. Welcome to the courtyard's unspoken war, the scribe's Cold War. You realise that while temple hierarchy is rigid, the space between rank and ruin is governed by gossip, gestures, and very selective memory. And nowhere is that more obvious than in the archive room. It's a vaulted chamber near the rear of the temple complex. Cool, quiet, and always smelling like old ash and mouldy parchment. Rows of clay tablet shelves stretch floor to ceiling. This is where records come to live forever, or get misplaced under suspicious circumstances. One afternoon, Nabutu sends you there to find a grain ledger from 8 cycles ago. Tablet 22 Alpha, he says, filed under temple donations. Easy enough, you think. You shouldn't have thought that. You spend hours combing through dusty shelves, squinting at faded etchings, occasionally brushing away what might be spiderwebs or just ancient sadness. Tablet 22 Alpha is nowhere to be found, but you do find something else. Half buried behind a row of lesser festival logs is a misfiled entry from the cattle register, written in Lilu's hand, dated during her training period. It records a donation of 15 oxen from a merchant family known for their barley exports. Odd. You cross-reference it with the corresponding merchant tax record. There's no mention of oxen. Historians still debate how much creative accounting was tolerated in ancient Mesopotamia. Was it corruption or just improvisation? In practice, it was both, and you may have just found evidence of it. You return the tablet to its hiding spot, for now. The next morning, the tension hits a new level. You enter the courtyard and see Lilu already seated, surrounded by 3 scribes, none of whom have ever spoken more than 5 words to you. They whisper. You nod politely. They do not nod back. Nabutu is nowhere to be seen. A courier appears shortly after with a list of revision requests from the priesthood. All entries flagged for seal inconsistencies, he mumbles. Every single one is yours. You feel a cold knot in your stomach. Your stylus quivers as you recheck the tablets. The seals have been altered, slightly warped impressions as if someone had resoftened the clay and rolled a fake seal over your work. The changes are subtle, enough to be dismissed as a drying defect. Unless someone wants them to look like fraud, it's Lilu, or someone working with her, and now there are whispers that your audits are untrustworthy, that your seal isn't always applied, that you sometimes work alone in the archive room. Nabutu returns just before lunch. You confront him quietly. I'm being set up. He chooses Reedstalk, shrugs. Maybe, maybe not. That's it. He leans in. Do good work. Keep your stylus clean. Don't give them what they want. You grit your teeth. There are no HR departments in Uruk. That night, you sit by a canal with your feet in the water and stare up at the moon, wondering how many scribes have come and gone under this same sky. Some forgotten, others immortalised in clay. You scratch a small note into a scrap of unfired tablet. Lilu. Cross-check festival oxen log. Possible audit mismatch. You don't sign it. You don't show it to anyone. But you store it in your pouch, behind your reed stylus, just in case. You wake before dawn again. But today the city feels different. The usual cacophony of goats, sandals, and low murmuring has been replaced by a thick, uneasy quiet. You dress quickly, tucking your stylus and the unsigned note about Lilu deep into your sash. The temple courtyard awaits, but it doesn't feel like just another day of barley and bulls. When you arrive, you see it immediately. The tax chest has been unsealed. This is not a casual event. A tall, locked clay vault with a narrow tablet slot. The tax chest is opened only on high days and festival audits, usually under priestly supervision and in full public view. Today, it sits cracked open like a violated tomb, its seals shattered, the top askew. A scribe near the back whispers the word you were hoping not to hear. Tablet theft. You're not alone in the courtyard anymore. Guards pace at the edges, brows furrowed, hands on copper-bladed staves. Nabutu is here too, lips pressed into a thin, clay-coloured line. You make for him quickly. Who? Don't ask, he mutters. Priests are rattled. A tablet's gone. One of the temple tribute logs. Your stomach tightens. Which tribute? We don't know, Nabutu says. Or won't say. This is bad. Very bad. The tribute tablets are some of the most sensitive records in the temple archives. They detail taxes collected in kind, grain, animals, textiles, from all regions under temple control. That kind of information, in the wrong hands, could be used to, well, not exactly topple a dynasty, but definitely get a scribe reassigned to crocodile census duty downriver. The investigation begins immediately, and by investigation, of course, we mean a frantic blame game. You're not officially accused, but you're not safe either. Everyone with archive access is suspect, and your name is high on that list. You're a recent promotee, you've been auditing, you've been seen speaking privately with Nabutu, and, you wince remembering, you spent extra time in the archive last week. You attempt a normal day's work, counting clay jars of sesame oil, verifying donkey bridle distributions, but your hands won't stop shaking. Every whisper feels aimed at you. Even Lulu avoids your gaze, which should be comforting, but isn't. By mid-morning, the tablet master arrives. He's an elder scribe, one of the few who outranks Nabutu, and he walks like someone who's carried 40 years of temple secrets on his back. He wears black linen, heavily starched, and carries a triple-headed reed stylus tucked into a gold clip on his belt. Everyone out, he says, courtyard closed, except you. He's pointing at you. Great. You sit alone on the central bench as he paces slowly around you, inspecting your tablet pile like a skeptical potter, eyeing a cracked vase. You've been trusted, he says. You nod. Do you know what it means to keep trust in Uruk? You nod again, slower. No, you don't. Because if you did, we wouldn't be missing a tribute tablet. You open your mouth, then wisely close it again. He finally stops pacing and leans in. Some think the theft is political. Some think it's priestly. Me? I think it's personal. Someone's trying to climb higher than the gods allow. Your mind races. Is that a dig at you? Or Lilu? Or Nabutu? I'm assigning you a task, he continues. Not a punishment. Yet. He drops a new clay slab in front of you. It's not just any tablet. It's a raw archive master ledger. A thick, square beast of a tablet, dense enough to bruise your knee and large enough to record 10 years of donations. Start copying from the backup lists, he says. Everything, every known tribute, leave no gap. You nod, numb. What am I looking for? He doesn't answer, just turns and walks away. So you begin, line by dusty line. By mid-afternoon, your fingers are cramping. You've copied over 20 entries, some dating back to the early reign of King Lugol. Something. Hard to read. His name's half-worn. Some donations are staggering. 500 shekels of barley from Kesh, 3 oxen, and a gold armlet from a southern chieftain, 20 bolts of wool from temple weavers in Nipper. And then something strange. An entry that reads, 25 oxen, tribute by House of Siliakur, redirected to Temple Storehouse 3 by order of fragment damaged. Redirected? That's unusual. Temple tribute typically follows a sacred route. Direct to the ziggurat under seal, then divided. Storehouse diversions are rare, and always recorded in duplicate. Yet in the backups, this is the only mention. You check your notes. The original Storehouse 3 tablets are missing. Of course they are. Your brain sparks. What if the stolen tablet wasn't random? What if it was this one? Siliakur is a merchant house known for weaving and cattle trading. One of their family scribes trained under Nabutu. A redirection like this, especially undocumented, could mean theft, bribery, or worse, collusion with a priest. You take a deep breath. This is information that could get someone promoted, or punished. You scratch a final mark into the ledger, then take a blank tablet, then another. You begin creating a shadow copy, one that matches the official version, but contains your notations. Quietly, carefully, no seal, no name. You'll keep it with you, just in case. Because in Uruk, clay doesn't forget. The sun is setting by the time you leave the archive room, your eyes red from dust and squinting at ancient symbols no sane person has used since the flood myths were fresh. Your fingers ache, your back cracks audibly, and clutched tightly under your robe, tucked against your ribs, are 2 clay tablets, one official, the other secret. You've entered the world of backroom accounting. Congratulations. You're now both a bureaucrat and a liability. That night, you stash the unsealed tablet beneath your mat, hiding it inside a folded reed basket used to store ceremonial sandal straps. You stare at the ceiling. If someone finds it, you're ruined. But if someone else finds it first and spins the story their way, you're more than ruined. You're forgotten. In Mesopotamia, being forgotten is worse than punishment. It means your name fades from records. You vanish from prayers. You never existed. Sleep doesn't come easily. The next morning you arrive early, hoping to look innocent or at least competent, and find the courtyard tense. Not chaotic. Worse. Calm. The kind of calm people settle into when they've already chosen sides. You start your work in silence, reviewing barley distribution records from the outer districts. Nothing unusual at first glance, until you spot a discrepancy in the seals. 2 entries, same date, same tribute route, same weight of barley. But the seals? One bears the proper crescent of Sin, the moon god overseeing cycles and order. The other is smudged, off-centre, crooked, and just wrong enough to itch your brain. Fake, or more likely refired. It's a trick old scribes know. If a tablet dries but isn't fired yet, you can erase a line with water, rewrite it, then fire it again. But if you try to alter a fired tablet, it crumbles. Unless you bury it in ash and refire it under lower heat. Risky, smoky, possible. And here it is, right under your nose. You check the distribution records. The altered tablet goes to the inner temple. The legitimate one? Logged, then. Missing. You smell smoke. Not metaphorically. Real smoke. You follow it to the side of the temple courtyard where a small kiln has been hastily cooled, its outer bricks still warm. Someone fired something last night. Unauthorized firing, a voice behind you says. It's Nabutu. His tone is flat, but there's tension beneath it. He's holding a fragment of clay, still warm. It matches the size of a tribute tablet. We're being watched, he says. By whom? He doesn't answer. Instead, he leads you into the lesser scribe chamber and shuts the reed door. Listen. I've seen this before, he says, voice low. During the reign of Enki-Mughal, the priesthood gets sloppy. A shipment disappears. Someone buries the tablets. And when it's found, too late, they pin it on a clerk too low to defend himself. Like me, you say. Exactly like you. You take out your secret tablet. You don't show him the full text, just the edge. Enough to let him know you've got something. Insurance. He exhales long and slow. Good. Don't lose it. There's a knock. A junior scribe, wide-eyed. They've summoned you to the flame hall. Oh no. The flame hall is where the temple priests interrogate staff. Technically it's for disciplinary review, but everyone knows it's where things go from uncomfortable to dangerous. You're led through narrow corridors into a high-ceilinged chamber. Torches flicker along the walls, casting long shadows. A brazier burns in the centre. The high priest is here, so is Lilu. And a third figure, one you don't recognise. Clean-shaven, finely dressed, with a clay seal around his neck that marks him as a royal inspector. Perfect. You bow. Say nothing. Rule 1 in the flame hall. Don't offer what they don't ask. The inspector gestures to a tablet on a pedestal. Did you prepare this? It's your audit tablet from 3 days ago. The one with the missing tribute line. The one you know wasn't altered, because you sealed it yourself. Yes, you answer. He steps aside. And did you prepare this? Another tablet. Same structure, same script, different content. Your mouth dries. No, you say. That's a forgery. Strong word, Lilu interjects. You glance at her. Her hands are folded. Too calm. Too clean. The inspector looks between you. We'll know soon. Both tablets are being sent to Nippur for comparison under the Moon Temple's spectral fire kiln. You blink. That's a new one. Experimental, the inspector explains. They say it reveals layered ink. Scribes hate it. Of course they do. You'll remain in temple quarters until the results arrive, the priest says. You're not accused, but you are under clarity watch, which is a priestly euphemism for do not leave, do not speak, do not breathe unless we tell you. You nod carefully. Back in your quarters, you sit in the dark and pull out the second tablet. Your only leverage. It's not elegant, not dramatic, but it tells the truth. You brush your thumb across the wedge marks. Each one is a blade, and you're going to need them. The next few days stretch on like overcooked barley, thick, bland, and increasingly hard to swallow. You're officially under clarity watch, which means no access to the archive room, no temple courtyard shifts, and no unsupervised communication with other scribes. You're confined to a small stone chamber behind the temple kitchens, with a cot, a jug of lukewarm goat's milk, and a rotating cast of guards who look about as thrilled to be there as you are. The days pass slowly, marked only by the slant of sunlight through a high, narrow window. You spend most of your time replaying everything in your mind, the audits, the refired tablet, the warm kiln, the missing tribute logs, Lilu's 2 clean hands, and then, just when you think things have hit maximum absurdity, there's a soft knock at the wall. Yes, the wall. You freeze. Another knock, 3 taps, then silence. You press your ear against the mud brick, then a whisper. You still have it. You recognize the voice immediately. Nabutu. You whisper back, yes, hidden. Don't move, he says. You hear faint scraping. Then, astonishingly, a small reed scroll is pushed through a crack in the mortar. You unroll it carefully. Inside is a list, names, numbers, and beside one of them, scrawled in hasty wedge script, temple girls, beer bribes, and broken seals. It's not just a warning, it's a pattern. You recognize several of the names. 2 are involved in grain storage. One manages animal birthing logs, and at the bottom, half obscured, Silieka household, uncle of Lilu. Your skin prickles. It all fits. That night, as the moon rises, you take out your shadow tablet and add a final line in tiny, almost imperceptible script. Cross-reference tribute rerouting with Silieka gift cycle. You seal it not with the usual stamp, but with a small circular dent, your own private symbol, borrowed from a broken amulet you've worn since childhood. No one else knows what it means, and no one else ever should. 2 days later, just after sunrise, you're summoned again. This time not to the flame hall, but to a smaller, windowless room within the temple vault. You're ushered inside by 2 guards, who leave without a word. At the centre of the room stands a low table with one object on it, your original audit tablet. Next to it, the forged version, and seated beside them, holding a damp cloth in one hand and a small kiln-scorched probe in the other, is a middle-aged man with soot-streaked fingers and tired eyes. The kilnmaster from Nippur. He doesn't look up, just gestures for you to sit. You do. Then, without warning, he taps the probe on the first tablet. Yours? Yes. He nods. Clean layering, single burn, firing temperature consistent. Tap. Tap. He moves to the second tablet. This one? You shake your head. Fired twice, he says. Second burn uneven, fractures along the grain. See this? He turns the tablet slightly. You squint. A faint shimmer like oil on water runs across the surface where the inscription was recarved. This wasn't just tampered with, he says. It was rushed. The door creaks open again. The inspector re-enters. He listens. He nods. He looks at you. You're cleared, he says flatly. You want to cheer or cry or demand a transfer to literally anywhere else. But you do none of those. You just exhale. Lilu? You ask quietly. The inspector hesitates. Under review. Which means everything and nothing. You're escorted back to your usual bench in the courtyard. No apology, no parade, just a nod from Nabutu and a fresh stack of barley ration tablets to process. Business as usual, almost. That evening you're invited, not ordered, to a minor temple banquet. A rare gesture. It's a celebration of the harvest moon. 100 oil lamps flicker in the twilight. Priests chant. Musicians play delicate harp tunes. You sip barley beer from a carved shell cup and pretend the bitter aftertaste doesn't remind you of being interrogated. You spot the tablet master across the chamber, speaking with a diplomat. He doesn't look at you, but when he walks away, something small and square is left behind on your table. A clay token, unsealed, unmarked. You flip it over. Your name, one word, one wedge. Next to it, a symbol you don't recognize. It looks like a gate, with something sprouting from it. You tuck it into your robe without comment. Later, back in your quarters, you study it by lamplight. It's not just a thank you, it's a message. You're being watched, still, but not just as a suspect, as a player. The next day, a new face appears in the courtyard. A travelling archivist from Lagash. She's older, sharp-eyed, and carries a stylus like it's a weapon. You're asked to assist her in reviewing records from the war tithe decades ago. You nod politely, then realise they're moving you. Not out, but across. You're no longer a junior scribe. You're now part of the inner auditing ring. And while no one says it out loud, you know, this started with a fake seal, a tribute gone missing, and a goat that screamed at sunrise. Mesopotamia keeps excellent records, especially of who survives. The heat has teeth today. Even before midday, the air is already shimmering above the courtyards, and the clay underfoot feels soft enough to leave tracks. You squint up at the sky and swear the sun is closer than it was yesterday. Closer, hotter, and apparently in a bad mood. You're on lunar duty. Yes, that's a real thing. Because when your civilization is run on divine calendars, and those calendars are based on the moon's moods, someone has to keep track of lunar cycles. Guess who drew the short stylus? The temple's moon chamber sits on the upper tier of the ziggurat, half observatory, half panic room. Today, it's yours to babysit. Your task? Confirm that the priestly calendar still aligns with actual lunar events. If it doesn't, barley payments get messed up, festival dates land off cycle, and people start sacrificing the wrong goats on the wrong days. You settle in with a stack of old moon logs and one of the worst job perks in Mesopotamia, a clear view of the sky and zero shade. After 20 minutes of reading, your eyes blur. The numbers blend together. The entries become maddening. Moon rose 1 finger above Enlil's eye. Observed slight crescent, winds from west. No moon, Omen noted, pig refused to eat. That last one gives you pause, you scan forward. Turns out the pig's appetite coincided with an unrecorded lunar shift, which shouldn't be possible. You check the date against the standard priestly calendar. It's off by 2 nights. You blink, check again. The log says day 27, but the official schedule from that same cycle says the festival happened on day 29, which means the entire festival, sacrifices, speeches, and those painfully long hymns, was out of sync with the moon. That's a big deal. You're talking divine misalignment, ritual malpractice, possibly even calendar fraud. Now, in most places, a late moon doesn't mean much. Maybe you miss a party or two. But in Uruk, the gods are sticklers. A moon festival out of sync could mean famine, war, or that time it rained frogs near Eridu. Historians still argue whether that was literal or a metaphor for a bad barley harvest. You scribble a quick notation. Check pig omen against grain yield records. That's not a sentence you expected to write this morning. As you work through the remaining entries, a pattern starts to form. These small misalignments, off by a day or two, aren't isolated. They happen every couple of cycles, always smoothed over in official records, always blamed on divine delay. But the truth, someone's cooking the calendar. You lean back against the sun-warmed bricks and let out a low whistle. If this is systemic, then entire rations, taxes, and festival schedules are based on fantasy, and if you bring it up, someone's going to throw a very real sandal at your head. Back in the courtyard, you find Nabutu hunched over a tablet, deep in calculations. There's a pattern in the moon log, you whisper. He doesn't look up. There's always a pattern. No, I mean, the festival dates are off, like they're being moved on purpose. Now he looks up slowly. You've seen it too, he says. You blink. You knew? I suspected. He glances around, then lowers his voice. It started a few years ago. A new priest, young, ambitious, started tweaking the lunar logs, said the people needed consistency, that the gods would forgive a little. Scheduling. But that affects everything, he nods. That's the idea. You sit with that for a moment. It's bureaucracy playing God, literal God. And now you have a decision. You could report it, or you could ignore it, like Nabutu has. Safe, silent, or you could use it. That evening the stars begin to prick through the twilight. You walk the perimeter of the temple complex thinking. Near the granary, you hear the rhythmic slap of sandals and turn to see Lilu. She doesn't stop walking, but as she passes, she says, "The moon doesn't care what day it is." You say nothing, but your stomach knots. She knows, or at least suspects you know, which means this game just added a new piece. You return to your quarters and pull out your shadow tablet. Yes, that one. The one you shouldn't have. You press your stylus into the corner and add a single line. Moon logs diverge from harvest schedule by 2-3 days regularly. Then, on a second tablet, this one smaller, official, you record the day's observations. This one you'll submit. It's technically true, just not complete. And so you split your records, one for the temple, one for yourself, because now you understand, in Uruk, truth is a matter of version control. And just before you sleep, you whisper a quiet prayer to Sin, the moon god, not for forgiveness, just for clarity, because the light on your path, it's coming from a sky someone else keeps moving. You're barely halfway through your morning porridge, flavoured today with what might be ashes or yesterday's spoon, when a temple runner bursts into the scribe's courtyard, panting like he's raced all the way from Babylon. "Stolen tablets," he gasps. "Market Street. They found stolen tablets." You look up, barley dribbling down your chin, and lock eyes with Nabutu across the bench. No words, just a look. The same look soldiers share before a siege. Within minutes, the entire courtyard is buzzing. Priests bark orders, junior scribes scramble to gather their seals and rush off to Market Street like a flock of panicked pigeons. You're handed a small satchel of identifier stamps and shoved into a donkey cart headed for the city's main trade district. Market Street in Uruk is chaos on a normal day. Rows of stalls covered in worn cloths, sellers shouting about onions and amulets, donkeys pooping wherever they please, and children darting between jars of pickled fish and smuggled frankincense. But today, it's a circus. Temple guards have cordoned off a side alley near the textile quarter. At its centre is a pile of clay tablets, some still intact, others chipped or crumbling, hidden in a half-collapsed storage shed behind a perfume stall. The smell is a nauseating mix of rose oil and mildew. You kneel beside the stack, breath shallow. These aren't just any tablets, they're tribute records. Your pulse spikes. You recognise some of the script. A few bear the seal of the high priest. One, half shattered, has your handwriting. "These were supposed to be in the archive," you whisper. A guard glances over. They were, until someone sold them for storage space. Wait, what? Turns out the perfume merchant had no idea he was renting out his shed to a tablet smuggler. Apparently a former temple porter had been siphoning off redundant clay tablets during archive rotations, telling priests they'd been sacrificed to the river, or moved to the subvault. Instead, he sold them. To who, no one knows yet. But a tip from a rival merchant, most likely jealous about storage rates, led the guards here. You're tasked with identifying and recataloguing each tablet, one by one, under the sun, with your knees in the mud and temple officials breathing down your neck. You examine the wedge marks. Some are your own, from earlier audits. Others are older, decades, maybe centuries. One tablet bears a stylized seal of King Lugalzagizi himself. If genuine, it's a national treasure. If fake, it's the clay equivalent of counterfeit currency. You mutter, historians still argue whether Lugalzagizi ever even taxed the northern provinces. A junior scribe near you blinks. What? Nothing, you say. You press on. One tablet at the bottom of the stack catches your eye. It's small, brittle, half-fired. You brush away the dirt and read the inscription. Storehouse 3, Sili Ikur, redirected. Your heart stops. It's the tablet, the one that disappeared, the one that triggered this whole spiral. Somehow it didn't get destroyed. It got misplaced or missold. You quietly slide it into your satchel. No one sees. Or if they do, they pretend not to. That's how Uruk works. Back at the temple, the pile of recovered tablets is ceremonially scrubbed, dried, and recatalogued. You write up your report carefully, listing every tablet you officially examined, except for the one that now rests under your bed, wrapped in cloth. Because now you have proof, not just of the redirection, but of a cover-up. Someone knew this tablet existed. Someone tried to erase it, not by destroying it, but by hiding it in plain sight, buried among back-alley trade junk. And if it's ever made public, well, let's just say the Silieka family might suddenly find itself several goats short of a priestly endorsement. That night, you wander Market Street under the pretense of smelling spices. In truth, you're tracking the shed. The merchant, a wiry man with oil-stained fingernails, eyes you warily. "You temple folk done?" he asks. "I can move my oils back in." "Almost," you lie. "Did the porter who used this space leave a name?" The man shrugs. "Didn't ask, paid on time, wore a blue sash." That narrows it down to half the porters in Uruk. Still, you press. "Did he ever come at night?" "Always," the merchant says. "Right after moonrise. Used to hum too. Weird tune. Said it helped him think," you nod. "Did he ever bring anyone else?" The merchant frowns. "Once. A girl. Younger. Smart-looking. She watched while he arranged the stack. You don't have to ask who. You know. Lilu." Back in your quarters, you unwrap the stolen tablet and set it beside your shadow copy. They match, stroke for stroke. Except there's a faint mark in the bottom corner, barely visible. A fingerprint pressed too deeply. You stare at it. You have Lilu's fingerprint. Maybe not enough for a public accusation, but enough for leverage. Enough to survive whatever's coming next. You press your hand to your chest, where the token from the tablet master still hangs in a pouch. Truth is messy in Uruk. Clay cracks, seals break. But some things stay pressed into memory forever. You're summoned at dawn. Again. At this point, you've stopped expecting your days to begin with breakfast. Or, honestly, end with dignity. This time, the message isn't barked by a guard or scrawled on a clay scrap. It's delivered by a temple acolyte, barely taller than your waist, who stares at you like you've already disappointed the gods and says only, "The king's scribe requires your presence." You nearly drop your stylus. The king's scribe? That's like saying the tax collector's boss's boss wants a word. This is high level, far above temple politics, above Lilu, maybe even above Nabutu. This is palace level. You arrive in the palace's northern wing, where the walls are cleaner, the air smells of cedar and honey, and no one steps in goat droppings. The king himself isn't present, of course, but the royal scribe, a man named Ishkundagan, sits behind a broad, polished table. No clay dust, no clutter, no nonsense. He doesn't look up as you approach, just gestures for you to sit. "You audited temple tributes last quarter," he says, eyes fixed on a line of wedge script. You nod. "Yes." He finally looks up. "We've noticed a discrepancy." "Of course you have." He slides a tablet across the table. You recognize it instantly. It's one of your own, submitted weeks ago. Unremarkable. Barley shipment from the southern grain districts. Signed, sealed, fired. "There is a second version of this," Ishkundagan says. "Different numbers, same date." He taps the edge of the tablet. "Yours is larger." "I included regional spoilage," you reply, trying not to sound defensive. "It's a standard modifier, applied at 0.5% for drought-prone zones." "Exactly," he says, raising an eyebrow. You wait. "No one else includes that modifier," he continues. "Not in temple audits, not in tribute logs, not in ration schedules." You blink. "Because they don't know it exists?" "They know," he says. "They just don't want the numbers to look smaller." Oh no. You've been correcting bad math, in clay, with your seal, publicly. And now, the king's scribe has noticed. "Historians will never agree," Ishkundagan says, almost conversationally, "whether the temple or the palace controlled the economy of Uruk. But we know the answer, don't we?" You nod. Very slowly. "Good," he says, leaning back, "because we'd like you to conduct a special audit." "Of course you would. Of what, you ask?" "The temple grain vaults," he says, "top to bottom. Compare them to the last 5 years of tribute logs, quietly." You pause. "Does the high priest know?" "No," he replies, "and if you're successful, he won't. This is more than an audit. This is a royal trap. You're being asked to investigate the temple from the outside, to dig up discrepancies, to confirm what the palace suspects, that the temple has been hoarding, lying, rounding up numbers and praying no one checks the decimals. It's treason. Or, depending on who wins, public service. You leave the palace in silence, the assignment tablet tucked deep in your satchel. You walk past the temple, past the courtyard, past the archive doors. You don't go in. You don't go near Lilu, not yet. Instead, you head for the granaries. The southern grain vaults are vast, domed structures made of packed mud brick, covered in white plaster to reflect the sun. Inside, the smell hits you. Old barley, dust, mould, and something vaguely sour that no one talks about. Workers move through the shadows, scooping, weighing, counting. You observe quietly. Your first comparison is simple. Weigh the actual stores against the most recent records. Already you find it. One vault is short by 4 shekels worth of barley. That's a lot of missing grain, enough to feed a team of labourers for a month, enough to supply an entire temple procession, enough to notice. And yet, the records show it as full. You make a small mark in your hidden ledger. Next vault, another discrepancy, and another. After 5 vaults, the pattern is clear. The temple's been inflating its records by about 1.2% across all stores. Not enough to set off alarms, just enough to skim, shift, and shadow into other ledgers. Where did the grain go? That night, you return to your quarters and unroll your earlier shadow tablet, the one with the Siliacur tribute note. You flip to the back. You begin correlating the inflated grain numbers with known festivals, and something clicks. The missing grain? It matches exactly the excess distributed during last season's sacred feast. Where did that barley come from? No one asked. Because it came from divine abundance, but now you know better. It came from fudged numbers, from quietly adjusted logs, from people like Lilu. You return to the palace the next morning and present your audit to Ishkundagan. He reads silently, then closes his eyes for a long moment. "You're not just a scribe," he says finally, "you're a problem." "Excuse me?" "That's a compliment," he says, smiling for the first time. "You ask the questions no one wants asked." Then, more seriously, "But be careful. Problems have a way of disappearing." He tosses you a seal, small brass stamped with the royal crescent. "Show this if you're in trouble. It won't stop an arrow, but it might delay one." You walk back to the temple slowly, seal burning in your palm. You're in too deep now, but so is everyone else. It's just after dusk when you slip into the archive room, pretending to retrieve a standard tax tablet for review. The room is nearly empty, just one sleepy assistant nodding off near the front, and the air hums with a familiar scent of baked clay and old beeswax used to polish the seals. You move through the shelves with careful steps, sliding your fingers along the ledge until you find the shelf with the tribute logs from 2 years ago, supposedly uneventful, supposedly intact. You pull one out, then another. You keep pulling. 3 of them are fakes. You don't need a kilnmaster to confirm it. The wedge marks are too sharp, cut recently, not weathered by time. The seal impressions are shallow, as if pressed lightly, without confidence. One of them even has the wrong moon phase notation, which a first-year scribe wouldn't miss. You scan the shelf and notice something else, an unnatural gap. Tablets are supposed to be packed tightly, aligned like books in a divine library. But there's a space here, just big enough for a missing record. Your hands tighten. You've seen enough. Just as you're sliding the tablets back into place, you hear a sound. A faint cough. Fabric rustling. Footsteps that stop too quickly. You don't look up. Instead, you pick up a random tablet from a different shelf and walk back out, keeping your pace casual. The next morning, you find Nabutu waiting for you by the barley counting slabs. His face is grim. "I saw Lilu last night," he says. "She was in the archive room. Said she was returning backup logs." You say nothing. "She had a torch," he continues, "and her hand smelled like ash." That gets your attention. "She's burning them," you ask. Nabutu shrugs. "Not the good ones, just the duplicates. Just enough to make it hard to cross-check." You mutter a curse under your breath and glance around. The courtyard feels narrower today, smaller, as if the temple walls are inching closer. "Someone's helping her," you say. "Oh, absolutely," Nabutu replies. "This isn't solo work. She's got support." "Temple priests?" He hesitates. "Possibly, but there's someone else." He reaches into his robe and hands you a fragment of clay, broken from a larger tablet, half a seal still intact. "I found this in the refuse pile by the archive ovens." You turn it over. Your breath catches. It's the vault mark from the palace, Ishkundagan. "Why would the palace be involved in hiding the missing grain?" you ask, heart pounding. Nabutu gives you a look that says, "Don't be naive." "It's not about the grain," he says. "It's about the timing. The shortfall would have triggered a reallocation from royal stores, which looks bad for the king. Better to cover it up, blame temple scribes, and keep royal ledgers clean." Your stomach turns. You're not just in the middle of a temple conspiracy. You're standing between 2 lies. Temple fraud on one side, royal silence on the other, and you've got a pouch full of tablets, and just enough truth to be dangerous. That afternoon, you slip back into the archive room again, this time with purpose. You've made a plan. You remove one of the fakes, the tribute tablet with the 2 clean wedge marks. You carve a small line across the top edge, not enough to ruin it, just enough to identify it later. Then you leave it out on the sorting table where Lilu will find it. It's bait, and if she moves it, or tries to burn it, you'll know. 2 hours later it's gone. You wait until just after evening meal, then follow the scent of ash. The kiln room is deep within the temple walls, connected to the archive through a series of narrow passages. It's normally used to fire official tablets, sealed under priestly supervision, but tonight it's active, quietly. The door is cracked. You peer in. Lilu is there, alone, the flickering kiln light painting her face in molten gold. She holds a tablet in both hands, not the one you marked. A different one, bigger, older. She doesn't notice you, until you step forward and speak. Destroying that won't save you. She spins, startled, nearly dropping the tablet. "You're not supposed to be here," she says, breath quick. "Neither are you," you reply. She sets the tablet down, slowly. "You don't understand. Try me." She stares into the kiln flames for a long time. Then, the grain diversion wasn't just greed, it was a stopgap. The southern fields were failing. The temple didn't have enough. If we admitted that, people would panic, so we borrowed from the next year's yield, smoothed the numbers, delayed the reckoning. And the tribute tablet? Same idea, she says. If we reported what was actually collected, the gods would look weak, so we padded it. A little. You step closer. And when someone noticed, she doesn't answer. You ask again, softly, "Who told you to start the fire?" She looks at you now, and for the first time her mask cracks. Just a little. "Ishkun," she says, barely a whisper. "The palace wanted to pin the mess on the temple, so they offered me protection, said I'd get promoted if I made sure certain tablets went missing." You nod. It makes sense, too much sense, and now you understand. No one is clean. The palace blames the temple hides behind the gods, the scribes carry it all, and somewhere, in this tangled mess, the truth is being fired into clay, or erased in smoke. You leave the kiln room without another word. But not before you pick up the tablet Lilu had set down. You don't burn it, you don't file it, you hide it. Because clay may crack, but secrets survive. The next morning the sky over Uruk is an unbroken slab of pale orange, hot still and heavy with the promise of another long, dusty day. You walk through the temple courtyard like a man balancing a sealed jar of scorpions. Every glance feels longer. Every smile seems thinner. You know something they don't. They know you know something. And now you know they know. You're holding the most dangerous thing in Mesopotamia. No, not a sword, not a plague, a tablet. Specifically the tablet Lilu nearly burned. Still warm when you retrieved it from the kiln room last night. You haven't opened it in daylight. You didn't dare. But you felt the weight of its meaning. Now, before the courtyard is fully alive, you slip into a narrow storage chamber behind the granary records office. It's barely a closet, but it has walls, a door, and, more importantly, no witnesses. You unroll the cloth and lift the tablet. The clay's outer surface is marked with the seal of the temple's Grain Oversight Committee. Standard, expected. But the reverse. That's where the whisper is hiding. There, etched in small neat script, is a list. Not of grain, of names. 23 individuals, each attached to dates, weights, and what appear to be rations. But the numbers don't add up. They're too large, far too generous. You scan the names again. Some you recognize. One is a barley merchant whose sons joined the priesthood. Another is a scribe who's never touched a stylus in his life. And at the top, Silieka. Of course. This isn't a ration tablet, it's a bribe log. Not just any bribes. These are protection payments. Extra grain given to temple-adjacent families in exchange for silence, loyalty, and just enough favour to keep the gates open and the priests smiling. And now it's in your hands. If this is exposed, it could collapse a wing of temple leadership. Or worse, drag the palace into full confrontation. You already know Ishkundagan tried to manage the damage. You already know Lilu was the match held near the parchment. But this is the kind of clay that topples statues. You hide the tablet again, deep. Then, you do what only a scribal survivor would do. You go back to work. Today's task is supposed to be simple. Rechecking festival inventories ahead of a mid-season temple procession. The sort of assignment they give you when they want to keep you busy but watched. But as you sort through the itemized lists of decorative offerings and sacrificial gear, goat bells, incense jars, ox masks, you come across an anomaly. An entire column of entries has been double stamped. That's not standard. Each line item is supposed to be sealed once, by the overseer, but here, every row bears two distinct stamps. One you recognise, a legitimate scribes. The other, a strange looping symbol you've never seen before. You call over Nabutu. He squints. That's not a temple seal. Palace? You ask. No, not royal either. He rubs his chin. Could be a family mark. And then it hits you. The symbol is a branding sigil used by merchant houses who've been granted temporary privileges during festival seasons. Normally, these marks are used on cattle, not grain tablets. You flip back through older entries and find 3 more occurrences, all linked to entries connected to the same merchant. Silly Ekur. He branded the procession goods, you whisper. Not just that, Nabutu says, grimacing. He owned them, and leased them back to the temple at inflated value. A loop. A shell game. The temple gets donations from merchants. The merchants get public credit. Then, the same goods are rented back by the temple for festivals, funded with taxpayer barley. And now, it's on the record. In your hand. It's subtle. It's brilliant. It's dirty. You look at Nabutu. What happens if this gets out? He sighs. Well, you're not sleeping near a window anymore. Nightfall. You return to the kiln room, quiet, dark, the walls still radiating faint heat from the day's firings. You light a small oil lamp and unwrap the bribe tablet again. You add a line to your shadow log. Payments to temple-adjacent elites appear structured, consistent, issued through procession inventory shell. You pause. Consider deleting it. Then you press your stylus in deeper. You hear a sound, footsteps. You blow out the lamp and wait. Lilu appears in the doorway, her silhouette sharp against the torchlight behind her. I know you kept the tablet, she says. You don't move. I also know, she continues, stepping into the kiln chamber, that you don't want to be blamed for what's about to happen. What is about to happen, you ask? She holds up a rolled scroll, a clay slip, thin and fragile. Royal Inquiry, she says. Ishkundargan is calling for a full review of temple grain records. Publicly. You frown. But you've been covering for him. I was, she says, until he decided I was too much of a liability. You blink. This scroll, she says, waving it, contains every name linked to the bribe tablet, except mine and yours. He wants to burn it tomorrow, pretend it never existed. You step closer. Then why are you telling me? Because I need you to keep my version. Her voice is firm now. If I disappear, or if the scroll does, someone needs to know I tried to clean it up. You stare at her. A part of you wants to say no, to walk away, to let them devour each other, but another part, a quieter, sharper part, knows that if you refuse, you're not protecting yourself. You're just blindfolding your conscience. You take the scroll. I'll keep it, you say. Lilu nods once. Then we're both scribes again. And just like that, she's gone. You hold the scroll against your chest, the weight of it no heavier than a breath. But you know better now. Breaths can burn temples. It starts with a whisper, always does. A whisper that grows into a breeze, then a gust, until it's whirling through the temple corridors like a sandstorm that carries nothing but names. Accusations hang in the air like smoke. A scribe gone rogue, a priest caught with duplicate seals, an archivist mysteriously reassigned to the canal district. You keep your head down, mostly, but inside, you're balancing on a knife's edge. Because now, you're in possession of 3 things that don't belong together. A shadow tablet full of inconvenient truths. A clay scroll from Lilu detailing bribes and whispered motives. And a royal seal from Ishkundargan offered when he still thought you were useful. They are fire, oil, and air. And all it would take is one wrong move to ignite everything. You wake one morning to find a reed scroll shoved under your door. It's unsigned, of course, but the handwriting, you'd recognise that aggressive slant anywhere. Come alone, riverbank vault, 3rd hour, bring the tablet. That's it. No name, no threat, just inevitability. The riverbank vault is where the temple stores fragile, unbaked tablets, things too fresh to fire, too unstable to archive. It's damp, dark, and on most days completely ignored. In other words, the perfect place for a quiet betrayal. You arrive early. The room is half underground, with vaulted ceilings and long rows of clay cradles. Most of the tablets are smudged drafts or outdated tax copies. A few are melting into mud. You tuck the real bribe tablet in your robe and pull out a decoy, one of your failed ration drafts, just in case. Footsteps echo down the ramp. Lilu enters, eyes sharp, fingers twitching. "You came," she says. Not a greeting, a test. "So did you," you reply. There's a moment of silence, then she gestures. "I need the tablet." "You mean the one you tried to burn?" She flinches, just slightly. "I was scared," she says. "You don't understand the pressure. The palace, the priests, my family." "I understand exactly," you cut in. "You tried to erase the evidence. You only stopped when you became part of it." Her lips tighten. "What's your end game?" you ask. "Amnesty? Promotion?" "No," she says. "I just want to survive." Fair enough. You reach into your robe and hand her the decoy. She takes it, eyes darting over the wedge marks. Her shoulders relax. "Thank you." "You should go," you say. "You've got what you wanted." She nods once, turns and leaves. You stay behind, your real tablet still safe, because you don't trust anyone with the truth anymore. Back at the temple, you're greeted by silence. Not absence, intentional silence. Scribes glance up, then away. 2 temple guards nod too politely. Even Nabutu isn't at his post. Something's changed. Then a page finds you. A summons. Ziggurat Summit Chamber. Now. You climb the steps again, your legs heavier with each tier. The air is drier up here, thinner. You wonder if it's harder to breathe because of the elevation, or because of what's waiting for you. Inside the chamber, you find not one, but 3 seated figures. The high priest in full regalia, his beard oiled and coiled like a question mark. Ishkundagan, calm, hands folded. And the tablet master, who rarely attends anything that doesn't involve funerals or resealing old vaults. They don't tell you to sit, they just look at you. "You've been busy," Ishkun says. You say nothing. The high priest speaks next. There are rumours of falsified records, of sealed bribe tablets, of unauthorised firings. Still, you don't speak. The tablet master finally chimes in. There's also the matter of a missing scroll, one that names several members of the merchant elite. You nod slowly. Then, for the first time in your career as a eunuch scribe of Uruk, you speak with absolute authority. "I have the tablet, I have the scroll, and I have the shadow ledger." They don't gasp, they don't shout, they just watch you like statues weighing the next century. Ishkundagan leans forward. "We could destroy them. All of them." "You could," you say, "but others have seen them. Not many, but enough. If something happens to me—" "We know," says the high priest dryly. A long pause. Then the tablet master speaks, voice soft as old dust. "So, what do you want?" You blink. This was not the question you expected. They're not punishing you, they're inviting you, because you've become something dangerous, a scribe with proof. You take a deep breath. "I want control of the archive vault," you say. "All record entry goes through me. No more private seals, no more double burns." The high priest's brow twitches. "I want a rotating audit system," you continue. 2 scribes, 1 priest, independent oversight. "And in return," Ishkan asks, "I don't publish the ledger." There's silence, then slowly the high priest nods. "So it is written," he says. "So it shall be forgotten." You walk out of the ziggurat as the sun rises, the city stretching before you like an open ledger. Messy, beautiful, half-truthful. You've kept the tablet, not to expose it, not to burn it, but because someone has to remember. Someone has to decide what gets preserved, and what quietly disappears into mud. You don't sleep that night. Not from fear, exactly, but from something stranger, something heavier. The kind of weight that comes when you realise you're no longer just surviving the system, you've become part of it. A lever in the machine, a hinge in the clay. You sit in the half-light of your room, the bribe tablet wrapped and hidden, the shadow ledger tucked under your mat. In your palm is the small brass seal given to you by Ishkundagan. You could throw it into the canal, you could melt it, but you don't, because it's not just a key, it's a signal, and in Uruk, signals mean survival. You're interrupted by a quiet shuffle just outside your doorway. "Visitor," a soft voice says. It's one of the junior scribes. You tense until you see who follows him in. The blind potter. You haven't seen him in weeks. He's older now. Or maybe he always looked like that. Dusty hair like baked straw, hands calloused from years of fire and shaping. He doesn't speak right away. He just settles onto the mat beside you, pulling out a small clay pouch. He opens it with careful fingers, revealing a stylus. Your old one. The one you lost weeks ago. Thin, smooth, carved with your name in tiny wedge strokes. Found it behind the fire pit, he says, voice like burnt honey. Figured you'd want it back. You nod, take it reverently. I thought it was gone. So did I, he says, but Clay remembers. He leans forward slightly as if examining your face with ears instead of eyes. They're watching you now, he says, but they always were. You say nothing. I heard whispers, he continues. Temple guards asking about that scribe with the seal. Couriers muttering about forged scrolls, priests who suddenly remember your name. He grins, gaps in his teeth. That means you're either about to be promoted or buried, you snort. Thanks for the clarity. I've buried pots for less, he mutters. You shift slightly. Why are you really here? The potter tilts his head like listening to something far away. To remind you of this, when everything's fired, everything cracks. It's the flaws that keep clay from exploding. You have to leave space. He pulls something else from his pouch. A tiny unfinished figurine. It's barely formed. A human shape, slumped, its head half carved. No details, no seal. Made this for someone once, he says. Didn't get to finish it. He sets it in your palm. You stare at it, speechless. And if you ever need a tablet fired, he adds, without questions, without witnesses, I know where to find you, you finish. He smiles and leaves. The next morning you take your first walk into the archive vault as its new overseer. The guards at the door bow, stiff and confused. The junior scribes clear a space for you without being asked. Nabutu raises an eyebrow, but says nothing. The first thing you do is rearrange the seal cabinet. One row for priests, one for auditors, one for unknowns. A quiet signal to the scribes that no tablet enters this vault without a traceable seal, and if it does, it goes in the unknown drawer. Your second act is even quieter. You call for Lilu. She arrives within the hour, composed, her robes crisp, her face unreadable. You're not here to gloat, she says. No, you answer. I'm offering you something. She narrows her eyes. Forgiveness? Purpose. You place a new stylus on the table between you. Unmarked. Fresh. You start again. You help build this. You report only to the archive. Not the temple. Not the palace. Just the record. She stares at it. Then slowly she picks it up. Still don't like you, she mutters. Perfect, you say. And just like that you have a deputy. Later, as you reorganize old unsealed drafts, you find a long-forgotten tablet. Edges warped, script barely legible. It's a funeral register. Old, maybe 30 years. You scan the names lazily, until one catches your eye. Namtar, pottery firekeeper. Cause of death. Kiln collapse. You blink. That's not right. You're blind potter. He's alive, isn't he? You reread the line, the name, the role, same man. But this tablet was fired, sealed and archived decades ago. You feel a chill creep up your arms. You tuck it back into the stack, uncertain whether to move it, break it, or leave it as it is. Because maybe some ghosts want to be remembered, and others, they're still making sure the right tablets burn. That evening you return to your quarters, place the unfinished figurine by your oil lamp, and finally sleep. Not peacefully, but without fear. Because now you know where the vaults hide their secrets, and more importantly, you know how to fire your own. You're dreaming of dust again. Not metaphorical dust, the real kind. The kind that gets into your teeth when you breathe too close to the archive stacks. The kind that rises in gentle clouds when you lift a long-forgotten tablet from its cradle. In your dream, you're writing with your old stylus. Not copying, not correcting, just writing. Your own thoughts, your own marks. A story not for the temple, not for the king, but for whoever comes after. Then, the dream shifts. You're standing in a field of broken tablets, the wedge-shaped script crumbling around your feet like fallen leaves. A soft voice whispers, "What do you want remembered?" You wake up before you can answer. The next day begins with a fever. It creeps in during morning ration audits. Just a faint sweat at first, then a fog behind the eyes. By the time you're halfway through your inspection of barley silo inventories, your legs feel heavy, your thoughts stick like molasses, and the tablet in your hand suddenly feels like it weighs 10 shekels. Nabutu notices. He takes you by the elbow gently but firmly and leads you out of the courtyard. "You're no use dead," he says, ushering you into a shaded chamber near the temple kitchens. The room smells like cooling clay and crushed garlic. Not comforting, but at least it's quiet. A priestess brings a cloth soaked in date vinegar and lays it across your forehead. You close your eyes, breathe, try not to think. That works for about 2 minutes. Then, as your mind drifts in the haze of fever and exhaustion, you remember something. A tablet from your earliest days. You'd copied it under duress. Bad light, poor clay, rushed fingers. Rushed. A shipment record. You hadn't thought about it since, but now, through the fever fog, you remember the numbers, and they don't match. You sit up too fast. The room spins. "Easy," says the priestess. But your mind is racing. That shipment, years ago, it listed 3 oxen, but the original had 4. You remember because one of them was sick and the temple had docked the overseer's barley rations in retaliation. Somehow, in the copy, that 4th oxen was scrubbed out. It wasn't a mistake. It was practice. A test run for all the forgeries that came later. You push yourself to your feet. You can't rest now. Not when your stylus might be dipped in lies you never meant to tell. You stagger to the archive room just as the midday sun makes the mud walls glow red. Lilu sees you first. "You're sweating through your sash," she says. "Sit down." You wave her off. "I need to see the old audit logs," you say. "From the first season of my assignment." She stares. "Those are in the Bone Vault." The Bone Vault. Of course. It's the nickname for the oldest archive chamber, deep beneath the ziggurat carved into the bedrock. Cold, quiet, crowded with tablets so brittle they're practically fossilized. No one goes there unless they're desperate or haunted. So, you go. Lilu follows. The Bone Vault lives up to its name. The air smells of mineral dust and ancient ink. Shelves groan under the weight of centuries. The light from your torches flickers, casting odd shadows across the worn clay. You move slowly, careful not to disturb anything. The slightest bump could snap a record in half. And then, there it is, your audit tablet. Old, crooked, signed in your earliest hand. You brush off the dust, turn it over and find the line. 3 oxen transferred from Field Station 7, but you know it was 4. Lilu leans over your shoulder. "You're sure?" You nod. "Positive." And then she says something you don't expect. "I remember this tablet." You turn to her, confused. "I was assigned to copy it," she explains. "Before you came. The original came through the courier vault, but the high priest asked for a simplified version." "And you didn't question it?" "I didn't dare," she says. "I was new and scared. Same as you were." You stare down at the tablet again. That was the moment. The fork in the clay. The first little wedge where truth got bent. You never stood a chance. But now you hold both the record and the memory, and that makes all the difference. You rise slowly, light-headed but clear. "We fix it," you say. "How?" Lilu asks. "Not publicly," you reply, "but in shadow copies. Quietly, silently. We rebuild the real ledgers. Names, weights, seasons, oxen. No ceremony. No priests. Just scribes." She nods. It won't stop the lies, but it will outlast them. That night, under a cooling sky, you write your first true record. No seal, no audience. Just a clay tablet, a stylus, and a quiet vow. You begin. This was the ox they tried to forget. You begin writing by moonlight now. It's not romantic. It's strategic. The moon doesn't ask questions, and its light doesn't flicker like temple torches do. You sit on the flat roof above your quarters, legs crossed, stylus in hand, clay tablet balanced on your knees. Around you, Uruk settles into its nighttime hum, the distant bray of a donkey, a temple drum marking a late prayer shift, the soft clatter of amphora being stacked in a nearby alley. And you write. Not for the temple, not for the palace, not even for yourself exactly. You write to remember. Truths no one will ask for. Discrepancies no one will admit. Stories that would otherwise vanish in the kiln smoke of official records. You call them the whispered tablets. They're not signed, not sealed, just lined up along your wall in a shallow basket beneath folded fabric. And each night you add one more. Tonight's is about Ilukum, the sick labourer who fainted during barley distribution, then quietly disappeared from the ration rolls a week later. You found his name scratched out on 3 ledgers, replaced by a symbol that meant reassigned to agricultural service. But you heard a different story from one of the temple guards. Ilukum had asked why the rations were short, and then he was gone, so you write his name, his story, his last known barley weight. You press your stylus into the clay a little deeper than usual, because someone should. The next day, Nabutu brings news. There's to be a royal review, he says, eyes wary. Ishkundagan is sending a new inspector. You frown. Another one? He nods. They want fresh eyes on the temple ledgers. Rumours are spreading. About archive forgeries, false seals. They're looking for a scapegoat. You nod slowly. I won't be it, you say. Nabutu's smile is tired but proud. I didn't think you would. The new inspector arrives 2 days later. She's young, sharp, and unnervingly polite. Her name is Ashera, and she walks with the confidence of someone who's never been overruled. She requests access to all records from the last 5 years. Tribute logs, grain audits, even festival inventories. It's not an inspection. It's an autopsy. You play it cool. You hand her what she asks for. You answer her questions. You even let her into the newly organised archive, where you've begun cataloguing unknown seal entries with little red strings tied around them. She notices. You've been cleaning up, she says. I've been organising, you reply. She tilts her head. With discretion? You nod. With memory? She doesn't smile exactly, but her eyes soften. That night, you find another tablet in the bone vault. It's buried behind 2 broken festival logs, and it's clearly meant to be forgotten. It has no seal, no visible marks, just a single line scratched in at the bottom. Storehouse 3, 11th cycle, Silieka, you exhale. It's another fragment of the cover-up. You've lost count of how many now. They're not coordinated, they're desperate, sloppy, done by different hands, different scribes, each one trying to patch a hole that keeps getting bigger. You carry it back to your room like a newborn, wrap it in fabric, add it to the basket of whispered tablets. You don't sleep much. A week later, Ashera returns to the archive. I've finished my review, she says. You raise an eyebrow. And? There are inconsistencies, she says carefully, but no proof of intent, only gaps. Dust. You nod. Clay forgets, but dust remembers. She watches you closely. You've built something here. You've kept something alive. You shrug. I'm just a scribe. No, she says. You're a vault. Then she pulls a small pouch from her robe. Inside is a fingerprint tablet. Tiny, palm-sized, used to mark those given temporary royal immunity, usually reserved for travelling emissaries. She places it on the table in front of you. I'm authorised to give out one, she says. A gift, a shield. You hesitate. I don't want to be protected, you reply. I want the archive to be. She nods. Then this goes to the archive, not to you. She carves the vault's mark into the bottom of the fingerprint tablet, presses it with her own seal, then sets it in the archive chest. It's done. Your archive is now under royal protection, quietly, unofficially, but completely. They can't burn it now, they can't bury it. You've made memory permanent. That night, you climb the stairs to the rooftop again. The air is cooler now, the moon high. You sit in the quiet and write one more whispered tablet. The last line reads, We do not preserve truth to punish. We preserve it so the next hand knows where we failed. You press your stylus gently into the clay and let the silence seal it. The sky over Uruk has shifted. The dust still rises. The goats still complain. The scribes still arrive before dawn, rubbing the sleep from their eyes and muttering about bad ink and worse rations. But something has changed. You're no longer the scared apprentice scratching barley counts in the shadow of Nabutu's scowl. You're not the outsider, not the suspect, not even the quiet observer scribbling on the margins. You're the vault. People speak your name in lower tones now, with respect, with caution. They glance at your seal, not just to verify the record, but to verify the truth. Even the high priest has started asking for ledgers, as prepared by the archive, his way of admitting without saying that your version carries more weight than the one freshly cooked in the temple kitchens. You didn't ask for power. But here it is, and now comes the hardest part: what to do with it. Today is the cleansing of the vaults. It happens only once every 10 years, a ceremonial event where tablets deemed expired are selected, ritually reviewed, and either reshelved or returned to the earth. It's a euphemism, of course. In practice, this means burying the old tablets near the city's edge in large clay jars, technically intact but inaccessible to any future eye. You're handed the list of tablets marked for burial. You scan it quickly. 4 tax duplicates, 2 festival draft logs, 1 tribute shipment with overlapping weights, and you stop. A familiar tablet, the original bribe ledger, the one Lilu tried to destroy. Somehow, quietly, it has found its way onto the purge list. You look up, she's watching you from the edge of the courtyard. You walk over. "You added it," you say quietly. She doesn't deny it. "I thought you were keeping it," she says. "I was." She crosses her arms. "We can't keep everything," you nod. "No, but we can keep one thing. We can keep." Later that afternoon, under the burning eye of the sun, the procession begins. A line of scribes carries the selected tablets in clay jars to the city's outer field, where a fresh pit has been dug. It's all very solemn. Chanted verses, sprinkled water. A young priest muttering about the cycle of memory and forgetting. You carry your jar yourself. Inside, the duplicate of the bribe tablet. Not the original. That one stays in the shadow vault. A small, unmarked chamber beneath the archive floor. You installed it yourself. Not official, not sealed, but built strong, dry, safe. Because some tablets don't belong in sunlight. They belong in the silence beneath. That night, Lilu meets you on the rooftop. "I didn't burn it," she says, breaking the quiet. You nod. "I thought about it," she adds. "So did I." There's a pause, just the warm wind and the low throb of distant drums from the ziggurat. "Do you regret it?" she asks. You don't answer right away. "No," you say at last. "I regret letting it happen for as long as I did, but not stopping it." She sits beside you, not as a rival, not as an accomplice, as a scribe. "You ever wonder if anyone will read them?" she asks, nodding toward the basket of whispered tablets you've kept hidden all this time. You smile faintly. All the time. 1 week later, a boy, barefoot, dust on his knees, runs into the archive courtyard. He's holding a tablet fragment. Broken. Old. Unearthed by accident when a wall collapsed near the market. He holds it out to you with reverence. "What's this?" he asks. You brush off the dust. Tilt it in the light. It's one of yours. A whisper tablet. One of the earliest. The one about Ilukum. You look at the boy, then at Lilu, then back at the tablet, and you finally answer the question that's haunted you since your first day in Uruk. What do you want remembered? This right here. The name of a man who fainted in the heat. The ox that went missing. The moon that rose too early. The truth that almost burned. You close the boy's fingers around the tablet and whisper, "Take it home. Read it to someone. Don't forget it." And he nods and runs. And so, as Uruk sleeps under its canopy of stars, you sit once more at the edge of the archive, feet bare, stylus cooling in your hand, the scent of fired clay still lingering in the folds of your robe. The walls around you hold centuries of breathless memory, baked into earth and time, and you, a lone scribe who was never meant to matter, have carved your mark into it all. The night is still, the wind soft, you listen, and in the hush you hear the past whispering back. Not in shouts or judgment, but in quiet nudges, soft truths, clay cracking in heat, ink fading from reed, the stories you saved and the ones you let go. You think about what it means to be remembered, not with statues, not with song, but with a simple wedge mark on a plain brown tablet tucked somewhere deep where no one sees, until someone does. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. So now, you breathe easy. You lie back. Let your eyes close. Because the vault is sealed. The record is whole. And the clay remembers everything. Good night, scribe. Good night, Uruk. Good night. Turuk. 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 Good night. Uruk, good night. Uruk, good night. Uruk, good night. Uruk, good night.